Recognized is the gentleman from California, Mr. Garcia, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you and the committee for having us. We look forward to, of course, hearing from and having been heard from all of our witnesses, so thank you very much. Before joining Congress, I served as mayor of Long Beach, California. It's a city of about 500,000 people, coastal community. I was mayor during the entire time of the pandemic and the emergency. I also happen to be very proud of the response that we had as a community to this pandemic. President Biden called our response locally in Long Beach a national model. The governor of California said it was the best response from a city in the state of California. In fact, we were the first community to vaccinate 99% of our seniors. We're the first community to vaccinate all of our public school teachers in our school system. And we were the first city to reopen our public schools as a school system in the state of California. So I lived the pandemic 24 hours a day, every single day since it started. And I think it's important as we have this hearing and others on this important topic, because I know that the issue around the pandemic and our response will continue to be an important topic for the Congress. It's important to remember that this emergency was a catastrophic loss of life event. We've lost over a million Americans across this country, and just in Long Beach alone, we've lost over 1,300 residents, friends, families, and neighbors. Personally, I lost both my mom and my stepfather to the pandemic. My mom was a healthcare worker. And so the loss is real for a lot of us. We also saw our economy collapse. Jobs were lost, businesses were closed, folks became unhoused. And families and kids were greatly impacted, particularly around schooling and their ability to learn every single day. Now, there's been a lot of attacks by the Republicans on this committee and across the House on the Biden administration and our response, on the work that's happening in our agencies. I think it's really important to also note that we had a catastrophic emergency and that the president, the vice president, and all the folks in our agencies did and are doing their best job that they can to manage this emergency. So I want to thank the president for his response. I want to thank his continuous work that's happening right now in our recovery. A lot of folks don't realize that the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan saved lives. It saved small businesses, it saved cities, it saved nonprofits. The money that was sent to us by the federal government kept cities like Long Beach afloat and countless others across the country. It allowed us to provide food for those that were hungry. It allowed us to keep people in their homes with tenant and rental assistance. It allowed us to open homeless shelters where people were falling into homelessness. It allowed us to provide small business grants to small businesses that needed to stay open, to restaurants that were about to close. And so I am grateful to all of you that were involved in some type of oversight or implementation. I'm grateful to the federal government for providing support for our cities. And most importantly, the money from the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan provided opportunities for us to test, to vaccinate, and to keep workers employed. It's important to know that in any major crisis or emergency, there are going to be mistakes. We were all moving fast and quickly. We take them seriously and we learn from them. In California, for example, we've already seized or recovered over $1 billion in fraud and abuse. I think it's important to know that mistakes in emergencies are going to happen. But it's also to know who should be held accountable for some of these concerns being brought up by my Republican colleagues. And if Comptroller Dodaro can just remind us, who was actually president when the pandemic started?
President Trump.
Thank you for that, because I remember as mayor how difficult it was to get any sort of support from the White House. There was no PPE, we weren't getting our masks on time, we had to go procure tests ourselves, and so I am sympathetic that oftentimes in emergencies, things are going to be difficult. Us as a city had to spend $20 million of our own money immediately without knowing if we were going to get reimbursed or having support from FEMA, just to keep people alive on the ground. And to Assistant Director Smith, which administration actually established the COVID-19 Fraud Enforcement Task Force?
Sir, we were protecting President Trump at the beginning of the pandemic.
But then I believe President Biden actually put in place an additional committee on fraud and abuse on the pandemic. So I say that because there's obviously going to be mistakes made across administrations, but I'm grateful to the Biden-Harris administration today for actually trying to do as best they can to address some of the abuses that are happening. I also think it's important to put the entire context of what we're talking about in this idea that we've just experienced the single largest loss of life event in the modern era of our country. So I want to thank the three of you for your service, and I want to thank the committee for bringing this up in this hearing. I yield back the rest of my time.
Before I recognize the next member, Mr. Dodaro, you said there were $137 billion in unobligated COVID funds that are still.
I believe it's 157 billion.
157 billion.
Yeah.
How much, if you have a general estimate of the total amount of unobligated funds in all agency accounts, regardless of what they were there for? Do you have an idea of what's out there?
You mean for all federal
Yeah.
spending?
And unobligated funds?
I don't have any idea on that right now. I can find out and provide it for the record.
I would appreciate it if you would provide that.
It's a big government.
Yeah. The chair now recognizes